blame on gun control or mental illness. But outspoken NFL player Benjamin Watson has this message for everyone. In a passionate Facebook post, he writes, quote, "While justice demands this young man in Parkland, Florida be held accountable for the heinous plan he carried out by his own volition, we must have the courage to take an honest assessment of our culture in its totality and how it relates to this tragedy and others like it." Baltimore Ravens tight end Benjamin Watson joins me now. Ben, good to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. What did you mean by that?
Well, what I meant by that is that every time there's an instance like this, something really horrific, we talk about respecting life. And while that's very important, we have to look at our culture as a whole. We incarcerate our young men at alarming rates. We vote for things that create the disintegration of the family. We murder 60 million of our unborn since Roe v. Wade. We're a culture that really gravitates toward violence. And so while we must hold this young man accountable, we need to step back and say, hold on, what are we as parents teaching our children? How are we as teachers dealing with kids when they have certain conflict in the classroom? All these things are very important. So it's easy to say that it's one thing or the other, that it's guns or it's a law that needs to be changed. And while that may be the case, on a larger aspect, we need to, as individuals, as parents, as a community, as a culture, identify where we've gone wrong and be willing and have the courage to fix it.
You know, I hear you. One of the things that's so hard to fathom in this whole situation. I mean, he was orphaned, then he was adopted, and then he lost both of his parents, I should say. They both died due to illness. And then he was with one family, and then he went to another family. I mean, clearly he had a tremendous amount of tragedy over the course of his life. And these people who were very kind, they took him into their home, and they spoke out this morning about how they feel about all this. Let's watch that.
Everything everybody seems to know, we didn't know. We had rules, and he followed every rule to the T. We knew he had one Instagram account that my son had, and I guess that would be the normal one. These other Instagram accounts that he had, we had no idea about. My son had no idea about. As far as the animal killings, he never did anything like that at our house. We have animals, and he loved our animals loved him.
So given the change that you think we need to see, Ben, when you look at this case, this situation, what cries out to you?
Well, what cries out to me the most is that people are hurting. This young man went through so much in his life, so much tragedies, and people are really hurting. And when you take faith out of the public arena, when you take God out of there, people suffer. And whether you believe you're a Christian or not, those principles really carry us through. I mean, talking to my father, who has seen kind of how things have changed over the course of his lifetime, a lot of people of his generation point to the fact that when we start to remove God from the public sphere, we start to suffer the consequences. And so for me, I look at this young man and I say, there's a lot of people like him that are suffering. How can I reach out to him? How can I share the love and hope of Christ to him? How can I listen to him? A lot of times, because of the culture we're in, we're on our cell phones. We're not paying attention to who's around us. We're unwilling to communicate with others. And so they feel like they're isolated in these silos.
Let's put up these numbers, because Pew Research says that 7 out of 10 Americans consider themselves Christian. However, the number has slipped by more than 8% over the course of the last 7 years. So what do you, and you talk about your dad and you speak with him about this, what does he attribute that to?
Well, it's one thing to poll and say these people are Christian. More what I'm talking about is understanding that because of who God is and because of his love for us, we respect all life. And that there's a broad spectrum there. The way you treat people is very, very important. Even if you look at it now, you look at how we go back and forth. We get in our different tribes. We call names. We shout. We scream. We curse at each other over social media. There seems to be such a great divide when it comes to how we communicate with each other. I believe that all of that really is kind of the underlying foundation when we start to see more things like this starting to happen, because people are really, really, really frustrated and they don't quite know how to lash out because they're not really looking at each other the way God would see us.
You said, Ben, in your Facebook post, over this week, while we have been